The Volcarian Empire had ruled the stars for more than 1,000 years. Their warriors were born for battle. They stood 8 feet tall with hard shells covering their bodies like armor made of bone. Their claws could cut through metal. Their eyes could see in complete darkness. They had conquered 17 star systems and made slaves of every species they found. When their scout ships discovered Earth in the year 2247, High Commander Zorvik looked at the images of humans and laughed. He sat in his command chair aboard the massive flagship called Eternal Dominion. Around him, his officers watched the screen showing the strange creatures walking on 2 legs on a blue and green world. "Look at them," Zorvik said. His voice was deep like thunder. "They have no shells, no claws. Their skin is soft like the belly of a newborn. How did such weak creatures ever learn to build ships?" His second officer, a scarred veteran named Thrax, leaned forward to study the images. "They have spread across their entire planet, Commander. They have satellites and space stations. They have weapons. Weapons made of metal because they have no natural ones," Zorvik replied. "They are prey animals that learn tricks. Nothing more." The Valkorian War Council agreed. They had seen many species across the galaxy. Some had claws. Some had poison. Some had thick hides that could stop a blade. But humans had none of these things. Humans were soft and slow and small. The council decided that Earth would fall within days. Zorvik ordered his communications officer to send a message to the planet below. The message was simple: surrender your world to the Valkorian Empire. Become our servants. Give us your resources and your labor. Do this within 72 hours, or face complete destruction. The message traveled at the speed of light. It reached Earth in seconds. And everything changed. Admiral Daniel Hayes was 53 years old. He had gray hair and tired eyes, but his mind was sharp as a blade. He commanded the United Earth Defense Force from aboard the warship USS Defiance. When the alien message arrived, he was eating dinner in his quarters. His food went cold as he read the translation 3 times. Captain Lauren Mitchell came to his door. She was his second in command, a woman of 40 with short brown hair and a face that rarely showed fear. Today, her face showed fear. "Sir, the whole planet is in panic," she said. "Every government is calling. Every news channel is broadcasting the message. People are running in the streets." Daniel stood slowly from his chair. He walked to the window of his quarters and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an alien fleet was waiting to destroy everything he loved. "How many ships do they have?" he asked. "Our sensors count over 300 warships. Their smallest vessel is twice the size of our largest carrier." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. 300 ships against the 47 vessels in the Earth fleet. The enemy was bigger, stronger, and more numerous. By every measure of military logic, humanity had already lost. But Daniel Hayes had studied history. He knew that humans had faced impossible odds before. They had fought wars against nature itself and won. They had survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that should have killed them all. Somehow, they always found a way. "Gather the fleet commanders," he said, "and get me aligned to Secretary Cole on Earth. We have 72 hours to prepare for war." On Earth, the world changed overnight. Old enemies became friends. Countries that had pointed weapons at each other for decades now worked together. Factories that made cars began making missiles. Scientists who had competed for prizes now shared their secrets freely. Defense. Secretary Nathan Cole stood before the United Nations. He was a tall man with dark skin and a voice that commanded attention. The room was filled with leaders from every nation, all of them terrified, all of them looking for hope. "The aliens believe we are weak," Nathan said. They look at our bodies and see soft flesh. They look at our history and see wars among ourselves. They think we will break. They think we will surrender. They are wrong. He pressed a button, and the screen behind him showed images of human history. Soldiers charging into battle. Workers building great cities. Doctors fighting disease. Explorers crossing oceans and climbing mountains. We are not weak, Nathan continued. We are survivors. Every challenge that should have destroyed us only made us stronger. And now we face the greatest challenge of all. Not as nations. Not as races. As one species. As humanity. The room erupted in applause. But Nathan knew that speeches would not stop alien warships. They needed weapons. They needed a plan. In a laboratory beneath the mountains of Colorado, Dr. Samantha Wright worked without sleep. She was a physicist, a woman of 60 who had spent her life studying energy and matter. Now she studied the enemy. Their shields are strong, she told her team. But every shield has a weakness. We just need to find it. Her team was exhausted. They had been working for 30 hours straight. Coffee cups covered every surface. Equations filled every screen. But no one complained. No one asked to rest. They all knew what was at stake. "Doctor, look at this," said a young scientist named Peter. He was barely 25, fresh from university, but his mind was quick. Their shields resonate at a specific frequency. If we could match that frequency with an electromagnetic pulse. Samantha looked at his calculations. Her tired eyes grew wide. "Peter, you beautiful genius. This could work. This could actually work." They called it Project Icarus. It would take days to build. Days they might not have. But it was hope, and hope was something they desperately needed. Aboard the Defiance, Admiral Hayes met with his captains. They sat around a long table in the war room, their faces grim. On the screens around them, the alien fleet waited like a swarm of metal insects. "They expect us to fight like other species," Daniel said. "In straight lines, with predictable patterns. We will not give them what they expect." He pulled up a display showing formations no military had ever used. Ships scattered in what looked like chaos. Attack patterns that seemed random. Tactics designed to confuse rather than confront. "They are stronger than us," Daniel admitted. "They are bigger than us. But they have never fought humans before. They do not know that our greatest strength is not in our bodies. It is in our minds. We adapt, we improvise. We never stop thinking of new ways to survive." The captains nodded. They understood. This would not be a battle of strength against strength. It would be a battle of will against will. And humans had the strongest will in the galaxy. The 72 hours passed slowly. On Earth, people held their loved ones close. They prayed to their gods. They watched the skies and waited. In space, Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the Defiance. His fleet was ready. 47 ships against 300. It was madness. It was suicide. It was the only choice they had. "Sir," Lawrence said quietly, "the alien fleet is moving. They are coming early. We have only 53 hours. Daniel took a deep breath. He thought of his wife on Earth, his children, his grandchildren. Everyone he loved was behind him, counting on him to protect them. "All ships," he said into the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Hayes. The enemy is coming. They think we are weak. They think we are prey. Today, we show them what prey can do when it fights back. Today, we make them afraid of humans." The fleet powered up their engines. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same. The Volcarian Armada emerged from hyperspace like a dark cloud spreading across the sky. 300 warships arranged themselves in a curved formation that had terrified a dozen species into surrender. Each ship was covered in dark metal that seemed to drink the light of distant stars. Their weapons glowed with energy, ready to destroy anything in their path. High Commander Zorvak stood at the center of his bridge, his massive arms crossed over his armored chest. He watched the human fleet through the main view screen and felt something close to pity. Only 47 ships. Some of them were so small, they barely deserved to be called warships. "This will not be a battle," he told his officers. "This will be an execution. All ships, prepare to fire on my command." The Valkorian fleet moved forward as one. They had practiced this formation for centuries. Every ship knew its position. Every captain knew the plan. They would advance in waves, overwhelming the enemy with firepower until nothing remained but dust and silence. But something was wrong. The human ships were not behaving like any enemy the Valkorians had seen before. Instead of forming a defensive line, the human vessels scattered. They moved in directions that made no sense. Some went up. Some went down. Some moved sideways. There was no pattern that the Valkorian targeting systems could identify. "What are they doing?" asked Thrax, confusion clear in his voice. "Running in fear," Zorvak replied. "Like prey animals. Fire at will." The first wave of Valkorian ships unleashed their weapons. Plasma cannons fired bolts of superheated energy that could melt through steel like water through paper. In every previous battle, these weapons had torn enemy fleets apart in minutes, but the shots missed. One after another, the plasma bolts sailed through empty space as the human ships danced out of the way. The Valkyrian targeting computers tried to predict where the humans would be, but the patterns were too random, too unpredictable. Lieutenant Commander Kyle Patterson commanded the destroyer USS Horizon. He was 32 years old, with quick hands and quicker reflexes. He had spent his entire career training for a battle that everyone said would never come. Now it was here, and he was flying like his life depended on it. Because it did. "Hard left," he shouted to his pilot. "Then up, then spin. Keep them guessing." His ship twisted through space like a leaf in a storm. Plasma bolts flew past so close, he could feel the heat through the hull. But they did not hit. They could not hit. The Valkorians were trying to predict a pattern, and Kyle refused to give them one. "Weapons ready," called his tactical officer, a young woman named Sandra Green. "Target their engines," Kyle ordered. "Fire." The Horizon launched a spread of missiles at the nearest Valkorian cruiser. The alien ship was huge, 10 times the size of the Horizon, but it was also slow. Its shields were designed to stop heavy weapons from the front. They were not ready for missiles coming from below. The missiles struck. The Valkorian cruiser shuddered as explosions tore through its engine section. For a moment, it hung in space, wounded and confused. Then 2 more human frigates swept in and finished the job. The great ship exploded, sending a wave of fire across the void. "First kill," Sandra said, her voice shaking with a mix of terror and joy. "We got one." High Commander Zorvak stared at the screen in disbelief. One of his cruisers was gone, destroyed by tiny ships flown by soft creatures with no natural weapons. How was this possible? "They are using chaos as a strategy," Thrax realized. "Our systems cannot track random movement." "Then track them manually," Zorvak growled. "We are warriors. We do not need machines to aim our weapons." But it was not so easy. The Valkorians were trained for disciplined combat. They expected their enemies to behave in predictable ways. The humans refused to cooperate. They attacked from every direction at once, striking and retreating before the Valkorians could respond. Aboard the USS Defiance, Admiral Hayes watched the battle unfold. His face showed no emotion, but his heart was pounding. The plan was working. The enemy was confused. But confusion would not last forever. Captain Mitchell, status report, he called. Lauren checked her screens. We have lost 4 ships. The enemy has lost 7. But they are adapting. They are splitting into smaller groups to surround us. Then we change tactics. Signal all ships to regroup at coordinates 77 Alpha. We will hit them in waves. The human fleet came together like fingers forming a fist. For a moment, they presented a unified target. The Valkyrians saw their chance and focused their fire. Then, the fist opened, and the fingers flew in different directions again. 3 more Valkyrian ships fell to concentrated attacks. Their shields could stop anything coming from one direction, but they could not stop everything coming from every direction at once. Human ships darted between the larger vessels like fish swimming between sharks, striking at weak points before disappearing into the chaos. But the humans were dying too. The USS Fortuna took a direct hit and broke apart in a ball of fire. The carrier Starlight lost its engines and drifted helplessly until a Valkyrian cruiser finished it with a plasma beam. Each loss was a stab of pain in Daniel's chest. Those were his people, his responsibility. Sir, the horizon is taking heavy fire, Lauren reported. Commander Patterson is requesting support. Daniel looked at his screens. Kyle's ship was surrounded by 5 Valkyrian vessels. They had finally learned to predict his movements. In minutes, the horizon would be destroyed. Send the Fury and the Tempest to support, and tell Patterson to fall back. But Kyle Patterson did not fall back. He could see the 2 ships coming to help him, but they would not arrive in time. If he ran, the Valkyrians would destroy the rescue ships instead. All power to forward weapons, he ordered. We are going straight at them. His crew looked at him like he was crazy. Perhaps he was. But Kyle had learned something in this battle. The Valkyrians expected retreat. They expected fear. They did not expect attack. The horizon accelerated toward the largest Valkyrian ship, all weapons firing. The alien captain hesitated for just a moment, surprised by the mad charge. That moment was enough. The horizon's missiles found the gap in the enemy shields, and another Valkyrian cruiser died in flames. The Fury and Tempest arrived seconds later, driving off the remaining enemy ships. Kyle sat back in his chair, breathing hard. His ship was badly damaged. A third of his crew was injured or dead. But they were alive. That was insane, Sandra said. That was human, Kyle replied. The battle raged for 3 hours. By the end, both sides were exhausted and bleeding. The Valkyrians had lost 9 ships, a number that should have been impossible. The humans had lost 12, nearly a quarter of their fleet. High Commander Zorvak ordered his Armada to pull back. They needed time to think, to understand what had gone wrong. His officers watched him with something new in their eyes. It was not fear, not yet. But it was close. We underestimated them, Thrax said quietly. We calculated their strength based on their bodies, Zorvak replied. We did not calculate their minds. That was a mistake we will not make again. He stared at the blue planet through the view screen. Such a small world. Such a strange species. They should have been easy prey. Instead, they had drawn blood from the greatest military force in the galaxy. Rest the fleet, Zorvak commanded. Repair our ships. Study their tactics. And then we will return and crush them completely. They have won a small victory. It will mean nothing in the end. But even as he spoke the words, High Commander Zorvak felt something he had never felt before in his centuries of conquest. It was small. Just a tiny seed in the back of his mind thought it was doubt. Aboard the Defiance, Admiral Hayes addressed his surviving crews. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the weight of the losses they had suffered. We showed them we can fight, he said. We showed them we are not easy prey. But this was only the beginning. They will come back, and they will be ready for our tricks. We need new tricks. We need to be smarter, faster, and braver than we have ever been before." He paused, looking at the faces around him. They were tired. They were scared. But they were not broken. "Rest while you can," Daniel finished. "The next battle will decide everything." 3 days passed in a strange kind of silence. The Volcorian Armada sat beyond the moon, their dark ships hanging in space like patient wolves waiting for the right moment to strike. On Earth, people tried to live normal lives, but nothing was normal anymore. Everyone knew that the enemy would come back. Everyone knew that the first battle had only been the beginning. Admiral Daniel Hayes did not sleep during those 3 days. He could not. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of the people he had lost. Captain Marcus Young of the USS Fortuna, a man who had served with Daniel for 15 years. Commander Beth Collins of the Starlight, who had just become a grandmother 2 months ago. Hundreds of names, hundreds of lives, all gone in the fire of battle. He stood before the memorial wall being built in Geneva. Workers carved names into white stone while families wept nearby. Daniel touched the cold surface where his friend's name had been written. His fingers traced the letters slowly. They did not die for nothing. He turned to see Dr. Samantha Wright standing behind him. He turned to see Dr. Samantha Wright standing behind him. She looked as tired as he felt, with dark circles under her eyes and coffee stains on her coat. But there was something else in her face, something that looked almost like hope. "We finished it," she said. "Project Icarus is ready." They walked together through underground tunnels to the laboratory where dozens of scientists had worked without rest for days. On a table in the center of the room sat a device about the size of a basketball. It glowed with a faint blue light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. "This is it." Daniel asked. Samantha nodded. "During the first battle, we captured data from the Valkorian ships. Their shields, their armor, their weapons, everything is based on a mineral called Velkite. It is what makes their exoskeletons so hard. It is what powers their technology." She picked up a tablet and showed Daniel a wave pattern. Velkite resonates at a very specific frequency. Project Icarus generates an electromagnetic pulse at that exact frequency. When the pulse hits Volcorian ships, their shields will collapse. Their personal armor will crack. For about 90 seconds, they will be completely defenseless. 90 seconds, Daniel repeated. That is not much time. It is enough time to change everything. If we can deliver this device to the center of their fleet and activate it, we can destroy them before they know what hit them. Daniel studied the device. Such a small thing. Such a huge responsibility. How do we get it to the center of their fleet? They will see us coming. We hide it on a small, fast ship. One that can slip through their formation while the rest of the fleet creates a distraction. Samantha's voice grew quiet. The ship will have to get very close. Close enough that escape is unlikely. You are talking about a suicide mission. I am talking about saving the world. They were silent for a long moment. Daniel thought about what she was asking. Someone would have to fly into the heart of the enemy and die so that everyone else could live. It was the hardest kind of mission, the kind that only volunteers could fly. I will ask for volunteers, he said finally, but I will not order anyone to their death. He did not have to wait long. Lieutenant Commander Katie Nelson was 24 years old. She had graduated from the academy 2 years ago, the youngest officer in her class. She had brown hair that she kept short for practical reasons and gray eyes that seemed older than her years. When Admiral Hayes announced that he needed a volunteer for a dangerous mission, she was the first to step forward. Why? Daniel asked her in private. He sat across from her in his office aboard the Defiance, studying her young face. You have your whole life ahead of you. Katie was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. My grandmother was a refugee. She survived 3 years in a camp during the African conflicts when she was young. She lost her parents, her siblings, everyone she loved. But she survived. She looked directly into Daniel's eyes. She told me once that survival is not about living. It is about making sure others can live after you are gone. My grandmother survived so she could have my mother. My mother survived so she could have me. I am part of a chain that goes back thousands of years. Katie leaned forward. Those aliens want to break that chain. They want to end humanity forever. I will not let that happen. If I have to die so that chain continues, then that is what I will do. Daniel saw no fear in her eyes. Only determination. Only purpose. He wanted to refuse her. He wanted to find another way. But there was no other way, and they both knew it. The ship is called the USS Spark, he said. It is a modified frigate, fast and small. You will have a crew of 12 volunteers. Your mission is to reach the center of the enemy formation and activate Project Icarus. And after that, you run. You get out any way you can. But I will not lie to you, Katie. The chances of escape are small. Katie nodded. She had already made peace with that. When do we leave? When the enemy attacks, which could be any hour now. She stood and saluted. Daniel returned the salute, holding it longer than usual. He wanted to say something more. He wanted to tell her how brave she was, how proud he was, how sorry he was that the universe had put her in this position. But words seemed useless. Good luck, Commander, he said. Thank you, Admiral. I will not let you down. She walked out of his office, and Daniel was left alone with his thoughts. He wondered if he was doing the right thing. He wondered if there was another way. But deep down, he knew there was not. War was not fair. War did not care about youth or dreams or the lives that might have been. War only cared about winning. Across the fleet, preparations continued. Engineers repaired damaged ships. Pilots practiced their maneuvers. Doctors prepared for the wounded that would surely come. Everyone knew that the next battle would be worse than the first. Everyone knew that not all of them would survive. In the medical bay of the Defiance, Captain Lauren Mitchell found Kyle Patterson lying in a bed. His ship, the Horizon, had been badly damaged in the first battle. Kyle himself had been injured by an explosion on the bridge. Burns covered his left arm, and a bandage wrapped around his head. You should be resting, Lauren said. I will rest when we win. Kyle tried to sit up and winced in pain. Is the Horizon ready to fly? The engineers say another 12 hours for repairs. You will be back in the fight. Kyle looked at his burned arm. I lost 8 crew members. 8 people who trusted me to keep them alive. I failed them. Lauren sat down beside his bed. You did not fail them. You kept your ship alive when 5 Valkorian cruisers were trying to destroy you. That was not failure. That was a miracle. It did not feel like a miracle. His voice was hollow. It felt like luck. And luck runs out. Then, we make our own luck. That is what humans do. She told him about Project Icarus. She told him about Katie Nelson and her mission. Kyle listened in silence, his jaw tightening. She is so young, he said when Lauren finished. So are you. So are most of us. Lauren stood up. But age does not matter anymore. All that matters is that we fight. And that we win. I, Commander Zorvak, studied the recordings of the first battle for the 100th time. He watched the human ships dance through space, dodging plasma bolts that should have destroyed them. He watched his cruisers explode, one after another, taken down by tiny vessels that should have been crushed in seconds. They fight without honor, Thrax said from beside him. They hide and strike from shadows. That is the way of cowards. That is the way of survivors, Zorvik replied. They know they cannot beat us in direct combat, so they change the rules. They are more dangerous than we thought. He turned off the recording and faced his war council. Hundreds of officers stood before him, waiting for orders. The pride of the Velkorian Empire. Akarian Empire. The conquerors of 17 star systems. We will not underestimate them again, Zorvik declared. We will crush them with overwhelming force. We will give them no room to run, no space to hide. Their tricks will not save them from numbers. He raised his armored fist. For the Empire. For glory. For victory. The War Council roared their approval. In hours, the Armada would move. In hours, the second battle would begin. And this time, Zorvik was certain the humans would fall. But as he watched his officers file out to prepare for battle, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered a warning. What if overwhelming force was not enough? What if these strange creatures had more surprises waiting? He pushed the thought away. Impossible. No prey species could stand against the might of the Velkorian Empire. Could they? The Velkorian Armada moved toward Earth like a wave of darkness. 287 warships spread across the void in a formation designed to crush any resistance. They had learned from the first battle. They would not make the same mistakes again. Admiral Daniel Hayes watched them coming on his view screen. The enemy fleet was massive, filling the screen with ships of every size. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, all of them hungry for human blood. 31 ships against nearly 300. Captain Lauren Mitchell said quietly. The odds are even worse than before. Then, we fight smarter, not harder. Daniel turned to face his bridge crew. Signal all ships. Execute Formation Phoenix. And tell Commander Nelson to prepare for launch. Across the human fleet, ships moved into position. They formed a loose circle around Earth, ready to defend their home with their last breath. Engineers made final checks on weapons. Pilots said silent prayers. Everyone knew that this battle would decide everything. On the USS Spark, Katie Nelson gathered her crew. 12 volunteers who had chosen to fly into the heart of the enemy formation. Their faces showed fear, determination, and something that looked almost like peace. You all know the mission, Katie said. We get as close as possible to the center of their fleet. We activate Project Icarus. And then we try to get out alive. A young engineer named Paul Chun raised his hand. Commander, what are our actual chances of survival? Katie thought about lying. She thought about giving them false hope. But these people deserved the truth. They had earned it. About 5%? She said. Maybe less. The enemy will be focusing on us once we reveal ourselves. Getting out will be nearly impossible. Paul nodded. His face did not change. I just wanted to know. It does not change anything. Why not? He looked at the faces of his crewmates. Because some things are worth dying for. My little sister is on Earth. My parents. My friends. If we do not do this, they all die. So we do it. Simple as that. Katie felt a warmth in her chest. These were good people. Brave people. The kind of people who made humanity worth saving. We hide in the debris field from the first battle, she explained. We wait until the fighting starts and the enemy is distracted. Then we make our run. The Spark detached from the main fleet and drifted toward the scattered wreckage of destroyed ships. Human and Velkorian debris floated together, a graveyard of metal and glass. Katie guided her ship among the ruins and powered down most systems to avoid detection. Now we wait, she whispered. The battle began with fire. The Velkorians attacked in waves, just as they had before. But this time, they used a different strategy. Instead of one large formation, they split into dozens of smaller groups. Each group targeted a specific human ship. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The USS Horizon was among the first to be engaged. Kyle Patterson had just returned to command, his arms still wrapped in bandages. He ignored the pain as he guided his ship through a storm of plasma fire. 3 cruisers coming from above, Sandra Green reported. 2 more from below. We are boxed in. Then we boxed them back. Kyle pushed his ship into a spinning dive, firing weapons in every direction. 2 Valkorian ships took hits, but they kept coming. The enemy had learned. They were not falling for the same tricks. Shields at 60%, Sandra called. 50, 40. All ships in Sector 7. Converge on my position. Kyle ordered into the fleet channel. We break through together or not at all. 3 other human ships joined him. Together, they formed a small wedge and punched through the Valkorian encirclement. 2 enemy ships exploded. A third was crippled. But the cost was high. 1 human ship was lost in the breakout, its crew of 70 gone in an instant. Aboard the Defiance, Admiral Hayes directed the battle with cold precision. He moved ships like pieces on a chessboard, always thinking 3 moves ahead. But no matter how smart he was, the math was not in his favor. He was losing ships faster than the enemy. The Resolute is gone, Lauren reported, her voice steady despite the horror on the screens. The Frontier just lost shields. The Constellation is taking heavy fire. Tell Constellation to fall back. Send the Prometheus to cover their retreat. But there was no retreat. The Valkyrians had surrounded the human fleet, cutting off every escape route. This was not a battle anymore. It was a massacre. High Commander Zorvak watched from his flagship with satisfaction. The humans were fighting hard, but they were losing. One by one, their ships were falling. Soon, the fleet would be destroyed, and Earth would be defenseless. They are stubborn, Thrax observed. They refuse to surrender even when they know they cannot win. That is the nature of prey in their final moments, Zorvak replied. They struggle because instinct demands it. But the outcome is already decided. He was wrong. In the debris field, Katie Nelson watched the battle through her sensors. She saw human ships dying. She saw friends being killed. And she felt a cold fury building in her chest. Now, she said, we go now. The spark burst from the debris field like a bullet from a gun. Its engines flared at maximum power as it shot toward the center of the Valkorian formation. For precious seconds, no one noticed the small ship. All attention was on the main battle. Then the alarm started. Enemy vessel approaching the flagship, a Valkorian officer reported. Small frigate class. Coming in fast. Destroy it, Zorvak ordered. Weapons turned toward the spark. Plasma bolts streaked through space. But other human ships saw what was happening. They threw themselves in the way, sacrificing their own lives to buy the spark a few more seconds. The USS Horizon was one of them. Kyle Patterson saw the spark making its run. He understood instantly what was happening. He did not hesitate. All power to engines. We intercept those plasma bolts. Sir, that will destroy us, Sandra said. I know. Kyle smiled, a sad and peaceful expression. Tell my mother I love her. The Horizon flew into the path of the weapons aimed at the spark. Plasma tore through the destroyer like fire through paper. The ship broke apart, its hull glowing with heat, its crew dying in fire and vacuum. But the spark flew on. Katie saw the Horizon die. She saw Kyle Patterson die. She felt tears streaming down her face, but she did not stop. She could not stop. Their sacrifice would mean nothing if she failed now. 30 seconds to target, Paul reported. His voice was steady despite everything. 20 seconds. The Valkyrians were focusing on her now. Every weapon in the fleet was turning toward the tiny frigate. Plasma bolts filled the space around her. One hit the Spark's engines. Another tore open the hull. Crew members were sucked into space. Paul was struck by debris and did not get up again. Katie was alone. 10 seconds. She crawled toward the console where Project Icarus waited. Her legs would not work. Something was broken inside her. But she kept crawling, pulling herself across the deck with her hands. 5 seconds. The ship shook with another impact. Fire erupted on the bridge. The air was being sucked away. Katie could barely breathe, barely see, barely think, but she reached the console. "This is for everyone who believed in us," she whispered. Her hand found the activation switch. Project Icarus came alive. A pulse of electromagnetic energy expanded outward like a ripple in a pond, growing larger with every passing second. It passed through the Valkyrian fleet, invisible but devastating. Aboard every enemy ship, shields collapsed. Warning lights flashed. Alarms screamed. The Valkyrians looked at their screens in confusion and terror as their invincible defenses simply stopped working. For 90 seconds, the conquerors of 17 star systems were completely defenseless, and humanity made those seconds count. Katie Nelson died as the spark broke apart around her. She died with her hand still on the activation switch. She died knowing that she had just changed everything. She died a hero. The 90 seconds that followed Project Icarus changed the course of history. Every surviving human ship opened fire at once. Missiles, plasma torpedoes, railgun rounds. Everything they had was unleashed in a storm of destruction that lit up the darkness of space. Like a second sun, Valkyrian ships exploded by the dozens. Their shields were gone. Their armor was cracked. They had no defense against the weapons that tore through them. Cruisers that had conquered entire planets died in seconds. Destroyers that had never lost a battle were reduced to burning wreckage. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, High Commander Zorvok watched his armada die. The flagship shook as human weapons struck its hull. Alarms filled the air with their screaming. Officers ran in every direction, trying to restore shields that would not respond. "What is happening?" Thrax demanded. His voice was filled with something Zorvok had never heard from him before: fear. "They did something to our shields," Zorvok replied. His mind raced, trying to understand. Some kind of weapon. Some kind of pulse. How do we stop it? "We cannot." The words tasted like poison in his mouth. "We can only survive." But survival was becoming unlikely. Of the 287 ships that had entered the battle, fewer than 100 remained combat-capable. And the humans were not stopping. They pressed their attack with a fury that seemed impossible from such small creatures. Admiral Daniel Hayes stood at the center of his bridge, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. He saw the enemy fleet breaking apart. He saw victory within reach. But he also saw the cost. The debris of the Spock floated among the wreckage. Katie Nelson was gone. Kyle Patterson was gone. So many others were gone. "All ships, continue the attack," he ordered. His voice was steady, but his heart was heavy. "Do not let them recover. This is our chance." Captain Lauren Mitchell coordinated the assault with precision. Every surviving human ship moved together, striking at the largest Valkyrian vessels first. The enemy flagship took hit after hit, its great hull crumbling under the bombardment. "Their shields are coming back online," Lauren reported. "We have maybe 30 more seconds. Make them count." The final wave of missiles struck the Eternal Dominion. The flagship lurched as explosions ripped through its lower decks. Fires burned out of control. Power failed across entire sections. For the first time in its long history, the pride of the Valkyrian fleet was dying. Zorvok felt the deck shift beneath his feet. He grabbed the railing of his command platform to keep from falling. Around him, His bridge crew struggled to control a ship that was coming apart. "Damage report," he demanded. "Engines are at 40%. Shields restored but weakened. Weapons systems failing. We have lost contact with half the fleet." Thrax's voice was barely audible over the noise of alarms. "Commander, we cannot win this battle." Zorvik closed his eyes. For 1,000 years, the Valkarian Empire had never retreated from any enemy. To run was to admit defeat. To run was to show weakness. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to stay and fight to the death. But his fleet was dying. His warriors were dying. And for what? A small blue planet filled with soft creatures who should have been easy prey. He opened his eyes and made the hardest decision of his life. All ships retreat. Full speed to the hyperspace jump point. The orders spread through what remained of the Valkorian Armada. Surviving ships turned away from the battle and ran. Their engines pushed them toward the edge of the system where they could escape into hyperspace and limp back to Empire space. The humans let them go. Admiral Hayes watched the enemy flee and felt something he had not felt in days: relief. It was over. They had won. Against impossible odds, against an enemy that had conquered the stars, they had won. "Sir, the enemy is retreating," Lauren said. Her voice cracked with emotion. "We did it. We actually did it." Daniel nodded slowly. "Contact the enemy flagship. I want to speak with their commander." The view screen flickered, and High Commander Zorvak appeared. His face was covered in blood from a wound on his head. His bridge was in ruins behind him. But his eyes were clear, and they were filled with something that looked almost like respect. "You called us weak," Daniel said. "You saw our soft flesh and our small bodies and believed we were prey. You were wrong." Zorvak stared at the human admiral through the screen. This strange creature, so fragile-looking, had just destroyed the greatest military force in the galaxy. "How?" Zorvak asked. "How did you do this? You have no natural weapons, no armor, nothing that should allow you to fight." "Our weakness made us survivors," Daniel replied. "We learned to think because we could not simply overpower our enemies. We learned to adapt because we could not rely on natural armor. We learned to fight together because alone we were nothing." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Now leave. Return to your empire and tell them what you witnessed here. Tell them that the prey species fights back. Tell them that Earth is not for conquest. And if you ever return with hostile intent, we will not show mercy twice." Zorvik was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he bowed his head in a gesture of respect that his species had not shown to any enemy in 1,000 years. "You have won this day, human. But the Empire has long memories." "So do we," Daniel answered. "We remember every friend who died today, every ship that sacrificed itself, every family that will never be whole again. We will remember, and we will be ready." The transmission ended. The Volcarian fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the debris of their shattered armada. On Earth, people watching the battle on their screens began to cry and cheer and hold each other. They had been saved. Against all odds, they had been saved. But aboard the Defiance, there was no celebration. Only exhaustion. Only grief. Only the quiet satisfaction of survival. Admiral Hayes walked through his ship, stopping to speak with crew members who had lost friends. He visited the medical bay, where doctors worked to save the wounded. He stood alone on the observation deck, watching the stars. Captain Mitchell found him there an hour later. She stood beside him in silence, looking out at the same stars. "They will come back eventually," she said. "Probably," he agreed. "But now they know. Now the whole galaxy knows." "Knows what?" Daniel turned to face her, and despite everything, A small smile crossed his face. That humans are anything but weak. They called us prey, Lauren. They learned we are predators who just chose not to hunt. And predators never stop fighting until the threat is eliminated. In the years that followed, the story of the battle for Earth spread across the galaxy. Species that had lived in fear of the Valkorian Empire began to whisper of the soft-skinned beings who had shattered an armada. Ambassadors came to Earth seeking alliances. Traders came seeking commerce. Scientists came seeking to understand how such seemingly weak creatures had become so strong. The Valkorians never returned. High Commander Zorvek spent the rest of his life warning his people about the humans. He told them that the soft creatures from Earth were more dangerous than any enemy they had ever faced. Not because of their weapons, not because of their numbers, but because of their will. On Earth, life went on. Cities that had prepared for destruction instead prepared for the future. Scientists who had built weapons of war now built ships of exploration. The human species, united by battle, remained united in peace. And in Geneva, a memorial stood to honor those who had fallen. Thousands of names carved in white stone, including Captain Marcus Young, Commander Beth Collins, Lieutenant Commander Kyle Patterson, and Lieutenant Commander Katie Nelson. Visitors came from across the world to touch those names and remember dot at the center of the memorial. A simple inscription read, "They called us weak." They were wrong. Admiral Daniel Hayes visited the memorial on its first anniversary. He was retiring, passing command to Captain Lauren Mitchell, who had earned her own ship and her own legend. As he stood before the white stone, he thought about all the people who had died so that others could live. He thought about Katie Nelson, who had flown into the heart of the enemy with no hope of survival. He thought about Kyle Patterson, who had thrown his ship in front of plasma bolts to protect her. He thought about all the unnamed heroes who had fought and died in the darkness between stars. "Thank you," he whispered to the wind. "All of you. Thank you." That night, he went home to his family for the first time in months. His wife held him. His children cried. His grandchildren asked him to tell them stories about the battle. But Daniel Hayes did not tell stories about the battle. He told stories about the people, about their courage, about their sacrifice, about what it means to be human, because in the end, that was the lesson the Valkyrians had learned too late. Humans were not weak because their bodies were soft. Humans were the strongest species in the galaxy because their spirits could not be broken. They had been called weak. They had proven themselves mighty, and the stars would never forget it.